Pues buenos días, el primer día después de la Pascua. Os veo descansados, yo todavía no. Acabo de volver de Madeira y lo hemos pasado pipa. Me tengo pies un poquito movidos de tanto andar, pero valió la pena. Muchas gracias por haber escogido esta misión diplomática para poder hablar de unos temas muy importantes actualmente y hoy en día. Siempre, y lo he dicho aquí al agregado militar de los Países Bajos, que me da mucho agrado hablar con estudiantes y sobre todo cuando son de varias universidades y así compruebo si son interesantes, si ponen preguntas o están solamente calladitos. Y lo he dicho ya una vez hoy, tengo una experiencia muy positiva, sobre todo con chavales de familias de migrantes aquí en España, que son los más curiosos. Donde vaya siempre ponen miles de preguntas, no solamente por ser curiosos, pero también porque no conocen Eslovaquia, pues un país pequeño por ahí en Europa Central y saben muy poco de nosotros, pero vale la pena. Bueno, habéis escogido vosotros, no yo, dos temas muy cruciales hoy en día porque el mundo está en marcha. La primera es la defensa europea, que es un tema muy caliente. Y me alegra aquí que podemos dar la bienvenida a los representantes de dos países muy amigos, de Holanda y de Alemania. Y sobre todo me alegra que está aquí el agregado militar, que os puede dar después detalles técnicos, donde yo me pierdo, como dicen en Galicia, estoy como un pulpo en el garaje. Bueno, autonomía estratégica entre la ambición europea y la realidad industrial eslovaca. Si me permiten, yo voy a un poquito acercarles a donde nosotros estamos más fuertes, que es la industria de defensa de Eslovaquia, que es una historia con larguísima trayectoria que data hasta prácticamente la época de la vieja y querida Austria-Hungría. Queridos amigos, es un gran honor poder recibirles aquí en nuestra embajada. Estamos en un momento definitorio para nuestra seguridad común. Sin embargo, para que la defensa europea deje de ser un deseo y se convierta en una realidad, debemos ser brutalmente honestos sobre nuestras debilidades. Voy a ser muy abierto y lo he puesto también así en el papel y a ver cómo reaccionar. Aunque nos hemos despertado, entre comillas, la brecha con Estados Unidos sigue siendo alarmante. Europa hoy sufre de tres problemas estructurales que limitan nuestra soberanía. Primero, falta de lo que en español, me lo encontró el Google Translator, habilitadores estratégicos, strategic enablers. Podemos tener voluntad, pero carecemos de los medios para actuar. Dependemos casi en un 90% de Estados Unidos para el transporte pesado, repostaje de vuelo y la inteligencia satelital, el famoso Starlink. Sin Washington, las fuerzas europeas hoy estarían ciegas y prácticamente sin movilidad. Fragmentación y caos tecnológico, y voy para un ejemplo, y muy simple. Mientras que en Estados Unidos opera con un solo modelo principal de tanque, el famoso Abrams, la bestia esa enorme, en Europa tenemos más de 15 tipos distintos. Leopard, el francés Leclerc, el Ariete, creo, y el británico Challenger, que los conocen todos por marca, y unos cuantos más. Esta variedad no es solo una pesadilla logística de recambios, es una ineficiencia económica que nos impide competir a escala global. Segundo, el déficit de innovación. Estados Unidos invierte hoy en inteligencia artificial aplicada al combate y misiles hipersónicos más que todos los países de la Unión Europea juntos. Corremos el riesgo de ser solo compradores de tecnología ajena. Ustedes cuando abren los famosos celulares, ven el sistema operativo, ninguno es europeo. Abren el Google, que es americano. Utilizan las redes sociales, espero que no sea TikTok, el resto todos son americanas. No hay ninguna sola que sea europea, cero. Cuando paso la frontera, estoy un poquito deslizándome de la defensa, el sistema de pago, el Visa, el Mastercard, el Google Pay, todo es americano. Cada transacción que ustedes hacen en cualquier tienda, van a Vips, van a, no sé, tomar un café, lo que sea, y pagan con su celular, la operación va a través de Estados Unidos. Como estáis en nuestra embajada, os voy a dar un buen ejemplo para que no seamos tan pesimistas, y un ejemplo lo voy a dar de mi país. Y lo voy a llamar la soberanía del ciclo completo. Es un tema muy técnico, pero ahí podemos empezar el debate. En este escenario de la debilidad logística, mi país emerge como un pilar de estabilidad en sentido de munición. Somos uno de los pocos países de la Unión Europea del selecto club de los 5, junto a Francia, Chequia, Alemania y Polonia, que posee una integración vertical completa de munición. Ahora, por ejemplo, del caso de 155 milímetros, que es la más grande, que el pepino pesado de artillería. Eso significa que no dependemos de nadie, controlamos desde la producción de nitrocelulosa y pólvora hasta la forja de los cuerpos de acero, lo que en España lo llamáis el pepino, hasta el llenado final, a través de dos empresas, que uno se llama MSM Group y el otro ZBS. Ya entregamos casi 150.000 proyectiles anuales y caminamos hasta el 500.000. Es decir, una sola nación, mi país, se encarga de suministrar actualmente el 50% de todo el objetivo de la Unión Europea para Ucrania. Esta fortaleza la compartimos con España, concretamente con la ciudad de Granada. Ahí yo siempre digo, ¿hay algún granadino por aquí? Tú eres de Granada, conoces la fábrica de municiones de Granada. Yo creo que el nombre de Granada viene de Granada. La fábrica de municiones de Granada, la FMG, pertenece al grupo eslovaco MSM, que a la vez pertenece al grupo checoslovaco CSG, Czechoslovak Group, el muy potente actualmente. Es decir, llamémoslo la propiedad eslovaca o la vieja buena checoslovaca. Es el ejemplo de cómo superar la fragmentación europea, capital y tecnología integrados en la industria española. Y tengo que decir, yo estoy aquí desde el año 2022, esa empresa fue, entre comillas, adquirida, aunque es una licencia prácticamente, en el año 2021, cuando ahí estaban empleados, creo que fueron 30 o 40 personas, perdón si me equivoco, ahora están más de 300 y es el empleador de toda la provincia de Granada con el mayor crecimiento del personal. Y no puedo evitar el tema clave de nuestra cooperación actual con España y con la OTAN, que es la presencia militar española en mi país. Ahora son los amigos de la Legión Española de Málaga, pero antes han sido amigos de Asturias y antes de los paracaidistas de aquí de Madrid y también los de Galicia. Y están haciendo una gran labor en el Multinational Battle Group, junto con otras naciones, pero lo más importante es que España lidera esa misión en el flanco este de la OTAN. Y lo digo muy orgullosamente que la cooperación entre los dos ejércitos de allí es perfectísima. He empezado a hablar de la OTAN. Bueno, todo el mundo aquí está mirando las noticias, qué es lo que pasa y cuáles son los comentarios. Yo no voy a ser concreto, pero voy a decir algunas ideas mías. Yo creo que no podemos hablar de la autonomía estratégica sin hablar de la OTAN. Y a pesar de los debates sobre el futuro de la seguridad global, la Alianza Atlántica sigue siendo y seguirá siendo la piedra angular de nuestra defensa europea. Vamos a debatir de ello seguramente, pero yo estoy convencido. La autonomía estratégica europea no debe entenderse como una alternativa a la OTAN, sino como el fortalecimiento de su pilar europeo. Un continente con una industria de defensa robusta y soberana como el eje que estamos construyendo entre Eslovaquia y España no debilita la alianza, al contrario, lo hace más equilibrado y creíble. Ante un mundo cada vez más multipolar e impredecible, La misión de la OTAN en el futuro será la de garantizar que Europa no sea solo un escenario de consumo de seguridad, sino un proveedor neto de estabilidad. Como jóvenes líderes, vuestro reto será integrar esta potencia industrial que hoy discutimos en una estructura de defensa transatlántica que sea moderna, ágil y sobre todo unida. Bueno, yo creo que aquí podría yo terminar, pasar la palabra a los siguientes, que ha abierto una brecha, han tomado muchas notas, y el moderador eres tú, perdona, sí, que nuestro amigo me ha prometido que nos va a hacer un grill. Pues te paso el micrófono. Sí. Perdóname.
No te preocupes.
Sí.
Y ya le damos paso a Guillermo y os sentáis sin problema. Hello everyone and welcome. First of all, allow me to change in English just for the benefit of our international audience. Also, first of all, Your Excellency Ambassador, thank you for your generosity and for hosting us here today. It's a very kind gesture, and thank you, Dr. Smith and Lieutenant Colonel De Winter, for coming today. It's not every day that the European youth is able to come to an embassy for anything else than maybe renewing a visa or something like that. And having the opportunity to talk about these very important topics, as you said, with real institutional speakers is a great privilege for us. Just for everyone's benefit, my name is Javier Chavez. I am president of Beta España. And I would like to take just a few brief minutes to explain why we're all here this morning. As an introduction, Beta España is a non-profit, non-partisan organization dedicated to European education and civic participation of youth. Our main tool for achieving this is the Model European Union, which basically is a simulation of the institutions of the European Union. Young people from across Europe come together and take on the role of MEPs, ministers, heads of state, journalists, lobbyists, and they go through the full legislative process from beginning to end, debating, negotiating, amending and voting on real issues that worry them. And this is the key issue. Why do we do this? Because we have seen year after year that young people are very interested in these topics. They are interested in issues that shape their future. And they care about climate, they care about migration, they care about defense, especially in the world we live in today. But very often, they feel that these topics are not really addressed, at least for them or with them in their room, as to say, right? And many of them, even though they are passionate and they are informed, they have never had the chance to understand how the decision-making process actually works. So that is why we have been working in Beta España for over 11 years and in the broader European network for almost 2 decades in giving these opportunities to youth. And considering this, last year we held MEU Spain in Santander, where we decided to take things a step further because usually, I don't know if everyone is familiar with these kinds of simulations, but in model European Unions and also model United Nations, you might be familiar with them, usually take topics that already exist or laws or proposals that are being discussed currently, for example, in the European Parliament, and they are simplified in order to make it debatable in a couple of days, and that is where the young people debate. But we wanted to give people the true experience end-to-end, and that is why we gave the opportunity for the youth to actually participate in the creation of law proposals on topics that are interesting to them, but that are not mainstream in the public debate. And for example, European Common Army or European Defense is something that, sadly, because of our current geopolitical circumstances, has taken more strength. But climate migration, for example, is not a topic that is readily discussed. Usually we talk about climate or about migration, but not them together, right? So we identified these 2 topics and we gave youth the experience to participate in the creation of these proposals to be also debated by youth. And I wanted to take first Guillermo, who is here today, and Isabel, who has not been able to come, sadly, and also Emilia Boyer, who coordinated this all, because they were able to work on these proposals and give them to the youth in order to discuss. Considering this, we asked the participants to debate these topics. That brings us to today. because these issues that have been simulated and there is an interest behind them by young Europeans, I think they deserve to be heard beyond maybe the walls of a simulation or the walls of closed rooms full of institutional speakers, right? Considering this, we also really appreciate that we have great institutional speakers that His Excellency the Ambassador Tamaga introduced already, which will give us the opportunity and the perspective of experience, the perspective of diplomacy and of real world policy making. And that is something that youth is not exposed to every day, so that is something very positive too. I hope everyone enjoys the discussions that will follow, and I give the floor to Guillermo so he can introduce the panel.
So, good morning everyone. It's a true pleasure to be here participating in this special European Defence panel. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the Embassy of Slovakia for organizing this magnificent event and for the invitation. I would also like to thank Javier, Ana, Carlos, Sofia, as well as all beta members and all the team for the great work they do. And most importantly, I want to welcome our fantastic speakers. So first of all, we'll have Mr. Ambassador. We'll have also Philip Schmidt as the first secretary of the political section of the German Embassy in Spain, and also Colonel Winter, representative of the Netherlands Armed Forces in Spain. Thank you all for dedicating your valuable time to join us here to discuss about European defense. My name is Guillermo, and I will moderate this session and participate as a representative of European youth. Last summer, I had the great opportunity to participate in MEU as Director of Defense and a member of the content team. We work on a legal text consisting of the proposal for a Council decision for establishing a common European Defence Army. So during my intervention, I will briefly outline the main key points of interest discussed by young Europeans during the MEU regarding the European defence. Afterwards, our fantastic speakers will ask them for their points of view on these young people concerns. And finally, we'll open a questions and answer session for the audience to feel free to raise your own doubts and concerns. So moving to the summary of the key themes we debated during the MEU, first and foremost, as young Europeans, we feel worried about the escalation of warfare and global instability during the past years across the globe. The Russian invasion of Ukraine and the resulting war have now seen 4 years of bloody combat, leaving millions of injured or dead. Added to this, there are other humanitarian crises, which are often forgotten, like the unfair situation of women in Afghanistan, the tensions between India and Pakistan, the intensification of the painful blockade against Cuba, or the expansion of jihadism in the Sahel. Forgotten conflicts, such as the brutal war in Sudan or the civil war in Myanmar, the expulsion of Sahrawi people from their lands, forced to live in the deserts, or the tension in Congo. But also more visible crises such as the genocide of the Palestinian people and the ongoing regional war in the Middle East, which is causing so much death and destruction. Another major concern we discussed during the MEU was the possibility of conflicts like the horrible war of Ukraine spreading to other European countries. It was deeply worrying also for us to see that several nations are considering the reinstatement of the military service due to the growing tensions. We also talk about the lack of consensus within the EU regarding some external conflicts. We recognize the difficulties of driving a common foreign policy that meets the needs of all members, but we also believe we have to work to build a stronger position. Furthermore, we are concerned about the shifts, as Ambassador talked about, of the United States in their foreign policy. We know that the US has historically been a close ally of Europe. However, in recent months, it has persistently confronted European states, imposing tariffs, with the trade war, or even threatening to invade European territories such as Greenland. More recently, we have seen threats to withdraw from NATO due to EU refusal to support the war with Iran. So this project was to create a common European defense army, and it was born to give a response to all these concerns. We have worked to draft a text that inspires, or we hope it inspires in the future, to the creation of this common European Defence Army. So now, after this brief summary, of our young European worries and doubts that we saw during the MEU, we will be moving to the questions to our experts and to the panel. Okay. Well, so the first question would be for all our partners. The first question would be for all our partners, and is, we believe it would be very interesting to hear your vision regarding this project of creating a common European defense army. Do you believe this would be a good idea for coordinating European defense efforts, or the other way, do you think it would be unnecessary given the existence of NATO?
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the clear introduction, and I must say your worries are also my and our worries at the embassy. And I always wonder what would have happened in 22 if we would have a European military. Would Putin have done the same in Ukraine? And I think we had the warnings. And I think with the EU getting bigger, and I read an article about the former president of the European Committee, responsible for 10 countries coming into the EU, that wasn't supposed to be a threat or perceived as a threat for Russia in a way that NATO is moving or might move more east. So in that sense, to answer the question, I believe that we could deter and defend Europe better with a stronger and more unified military apparatus. The European army is difficult, and I think that is also connected to the way the decisions are being made in the EU, with unanimity, difficult word. But I think to be able to preserve our values and our way of life, and I think Spain is very strong in emphasizing what is important for Spain is preserve the way of life, the Spanish way of life, in order to clearly task their military. So to preserve our values and our way of life, it's important to deter and defend, and for that we need a more unified European defense. Thank you.
I'm always a bit worried that I'm going to drop the other microphone. Well, from a German point of view, what is important at the moment is to strengthen, as we've already heard before, the European pillar within NATO. It is something that is in a deep European interest, we think, and we also believe that it is an interest that the United States have, as they have mentioned several times that Europe has to take more responsibility when it comes to their own or to our own defense. So also from a pragmatic point of view, we already do have the structures, we do have the organization, and we think it is good if we take more responsibility within NATO and if we have a very strong European pillar within NATO. Aside from that, also something that has been mentioned before is the European defense industry that definitely needs to work closer together and is already having several projects where we work together, and we think that those projects need to continue and need to be strengthened. If we talk, for example, about the Eurodrone or similar aspects, that is something that we want to push simply. And the other thing is that the European Union at the moment is working on a strategic paper on European defense, which is also something that Germany supports. But as I said before, European defense for us is also a strong pillar of Europe within NATO. But something else which is also a bit referring to what you mentioned before of how we discuss and how we debate things, I think it already shows that we are 3 countries here that have very similar views. We might differ in some parts, but I think that is simply something that is also very important to see, that we agree on many things, and that is something that makes Europe also very strong, that we want to work together and that we find ways to work together. And I think that is something that we very often forget, but it is one of the strengths that we do have in Europe.
Well, now I'll switch into English as everybody's speaking English. You didn't tell me. I thought I should speak only Spanish all the time. I don't care. Thank you very much for this question, and thank you very much for the replies of my colleagues. While speaking about European defense, I do fully agree what Rule said. Rule, right? That there should be more. Like say, I don't want to say to use the word unification, but more cooperation between the European industry houses. You have quite independent work out in Germany or in France, even in Spain, with the huge growth of the company Indra. You have the same, I don't call it a problem, situation in former Czechoslovakia. I call former Czechoslovakia because of Czechoslovak group. And then the other element we are quite forgetting, you know, is the close cooperation that we maintain with the United Kingdom, and also with other very important ally that is Canada, and that wants to join European projects in many aspects. So I still find the debate about the European defense very useful, very important, but I see there should be more involvement with the cooperation with other countries as well. Well, NATO is a North Atlantic Treaty Organization, but let's not forget about the other allies who are closely cooperating with this institution, like, for example, Australia or Canada or New Zealand or whatever, and their industries, because it's still a global politics and global situation that is challenging us. Sorry to open up more mic marks.
Thank you. So next question will be also for all of you. What do you believe they are the main and more important threats nowadays to European security?
Thank you. Yeah, that is what I every day have on top of my mind is we're not at war and we're not at peace. And the Ukraine, you mentioned it, the Ukraine conflict spreading to the rest of Europe, it's already here. So we're in a gray zone. I wouldn't say gray conflict. Others would say we're in a phase 0. And what's important, and we're working on every day at our embassy, economic department, political department, everyone working there, if to check if we're on the same page regarding threat perception everywhere in Europe. So I realized, being in Poland last year, May, that the threat perception there is very different than my personal threat perception working as a military, Dutch military attaché here in Spain. And that goes to cyber warfare, cyber incidents, the misinformation, disinformation. NATO talks about the threat in the information domain. So, excuse me. For me, that's a phase more severe in what we're speaking about. So there's not a lot of green uniforms on the street here in Spain, but we are not at peace. Let me end with that.
Well, when I talk about the threat perception in Germany, I'm very often asked, so how do you look at Russia? And I think something that is very important to see is that between Germany and Russia, you have Poland and Belarus, Belarus being a close ally to Russia. Between Spain and Russia, you have Belarus, you have Poland, you have Germany, you have France, and you have the Pyrenees. And Andorra. And Andorra. So I think the threat perception here in Spain is different from the one in Germany, definitely. What I also find important is what Rul just mentioned, that we do have to look at different kinds of threats. Cyber threats are definitely something that Germany is very worried about, just as the very real threat that the war that Russia waged against Ukraine could also spread even further into Europe. Something else that we find very important, that is also something that we have to keep in mind when we think about European autarky, independence and responsibility, is, for example, a strategic autonomy when it comes to questions of cyber. We talked about, or we heard about social media before, and also our dependency on China in that regard. If we think about how many products we get from China, how much technology we get from there, it is also a question of how do we want to structure, for example, our technological infrastructure, communication, internet and so forth, because we are worried that we get into a new dependency there that we should avoid if we really want to take responsibility for ourselves and want to have autonomy, strategic autonomy in certain fields that are fields that concern security.
Thank you. So now we are still, the first time we used that microphone, now the second round we are using this mic. Thank you. So thank you very much for the next question. What are the biggest threats to Europe? Well, there are several of them, but I still recall when I was in, it was I think in 2022 exactly, I was in Jordan with my then foreign minister, and he expressed, you know, what is happening, you know, all around us in Ukraine, whatever. And he said, welcome to our world. So this is the challenge that we have. It's not only dealing with Europe, it's dealing about the world, a whole world, actually. It's, before that, we were speaking about climate, yet it is still a great challenge. And it will somehow, we will speak about it, frankly, later on. Then we have wars around us, not only one, but several of them. Because believing it or not, that the situation in the Middle East is closely affecting to one of our members, I mean Cyprus, and NATO members like us Turkey. And then third, the disinformation and social media. I already started this topic because I like really that much to speak about that. I want to ask you, now I'm questioning. Do you watch TV news in the evening? All of you? No. Yeah. How did you get known that, for example, the Pope passed away? ¿Cómo te enteraste que murió el Papa?
Telegram, through actually a group friend, friends that we have, because they usually send a lot of news to us. People.
Telegram.
Yeah.
Still better than...
Our friends, not a random...
not some random
thread
feed
or
or something like
yeah,
that, but
exactly.
through friends.
Yeah.
Still better than TikTok, probably, but anyway. Anyway, so...
Gen Z, but still.
I'm quite, you know, worried about the, I consider young people, about the interest in the deeper news, because the generation that I speak with, they are able to be concentrated like maximum 2 to 3 minutes. Then the news is not important for them. I mean, when you want to read something into the detail, you need more time. And the real challenge is, it's not only my words, but I have a very good friend, the Minister of the Education of Slovakia, who told me he has a problem with his daughter because she's not paying attention to a movie longer than 20 minutes. And it's normal. I mean, I'm not, you know, criticizing, it's happening. But I believe that what can happen, this situation, what can change the situation, and the people are using more and more AI. Even if it's American or one is Chinese, but still they are developing the questions, even the youngsters. When they speak, you know, with Gemini or ChatGPT or the third one, Claudio, what's their name? I can't, Claudio, no? And they ask. And I think it can somehow change the situation in the future, because it's not only about the algorithms in Twitter or in my country, the social network #1 is Instagram. I think the same in Spain, and then probably Facebook if it's not passed away, but it's with too many publicities. The third one, less and less Twitter. But the people, young generation, I'm quite worried, are following only in TikTok. And it's only about the visual information. There is probably no text and just small subtitles, and they are not very much interested. I'm quite worried about this. I would call it a threat in the future. And I think the main weapon against this is the education, and we should more pay attention into the education of our kids, how to deal with the information, how to know to manage the information, how to know to separate information, what is good, what is not good. And I do not agree with forbidding social networks to our youngsters. It's my personal view. I know there is a lot of debate in Spain about that, but we have an example from Australia when it happened and the people and the youngsters start to use VPN about their private network to avoid all the rest. But it's a huge challenge. Okay, but I still consider it a threat, or better called threat and challenge, because we can still deal with it. Thank you.
Thanks.
One thing, please, because I found this aspect very interesting, that you mentioned that it is nowadays about images more than it is about texts. Yeah. And I think an important part of that is that with a text, you have arguments. You have words and you can argue against someone else, and then someone else answers with words again. If you just have images, it is very difficult to actually have a discussion. You have image against image, but you do not have arguments anymore. And that is also something about how we discuss as a society that is not possible anymore if you don't use words.
So, yeah, undoubtedly it's a threat. And regarding this topic, we have talked about the technological race. Maybe it's a too specific question, but what happens with the European AI? Because we have this, China has DeepSeek, has Baba, United States have Cloud with Anthropic, Gemini from Google, ChatGPT. So what happens with the European AI? Maybe it's too specific, I mean, but I believe it's a security and defense topic also. We have seen with these Palantir applications in wars.
My quick answer would be not enough. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, it's long enough. It's long enough. Now, I've been reading, and I forgot the name or the abbreviation, but you mentioned Palantir, and Palantir is also used by the Dutch government. With my legal background, like as a military legal advisor, in theory, that is worrying because the targeting process from object to target is going so fast now, and that's what I'm reading and I'm hearing about the military operations going on in the Middle East, and in what way are we humans involved in that process? So that's worrying me. So I think we must be quicker at the European level in developing a system that works for us in a military sense and works based on our values. That's very important. And how to solve it technically? I think with all the conflicts going on around the world now, I think we're getting more and more aware of it, also with the shifting coalitions and partnerships, also thinking about alternatives of what we're buying European level and the Dutch government from the US. We're still buying and we still need it, but we're also developing alternative goods and ways and systems. Thank you.
Well, it is a very specific question. I can tell you that there are some German companies that are working in the field, that there are startups, but what I also see is that what we are missing is a big European AI technology as you see it in the United States or China. When it comes to the state level in our ministry, I can say we are now implementing a first AI to work with us, or that we can work with in the ministry, which is something that has different requirements, obviously, because we are a ministry and we work with sensitive topics. And I think we also need solutions like this. I know that other ministries already have it. For example, in Great Britain, they are very advanced with those things. What I do find important with this topic of AI in general when it comes to military is that we also have to talk about the use of AI in military fields. Spain just recently had the Re-AIM conference, which I don't know if you participate, but you can probably say more about it, which is a conference where it is about the responsible use of AI in the field of military. And I think those discussions that we have in Europe are very important. And another thing that is being discussed in Germany at the moment is the question of Anthropic. Anthropic, that according to the news, said they wouldn't want to have a close partnership with the Pentagon. And now there are some politicians in Germany that say that we should try to get Anthropic to Europe. So that just as some points that we are discussing at the moment in that field. And I don't know if you want to say something about re-aim so that I pass on the microphone again.
I think you mentioned that it's important. Like,
okay.
Military in AI in the military domain. So I think in February we had a big conference in A Coruña. And every year there is a big conference to emphasize the fact that there's a lot going on. And re-aim is connected to and that's what I think is important, to the UN still. So it brings the UN, keeps the UN in position. And I think the next one up is going to be in Kenya, which is very interesting. That we've been in South Korea, Netherlands, now Spain, and going to Africa. So it's really a global development that's going on and very important. And basically, looking at the operational side of military operations, you're always walking behind the developments. So that's the difficult part, but well.
Should I add something? Yeah, well, as Ruel said, it was an important conference in La Coruña in February. I was not there because I could not, but we had a representative there, also from our military. And it's a quite interesting topic because we are all debating about how to control AI, but we are not producing AI. As I said, the very beginning, or the biggest world platforms, they require a huge amount of money, a huge investment. I frankly do not believe that a single country or a European Union can pay such an amount of money to develop such a huge and very well developed system where we can share our information, not with the other continent, but with our continent. And as somebody already said it, the Americans develop and Europe controls. The legislation that we are putting trying to put into the system, how to control the AI. There are already some new structures, I think, within the OECD who are trying to deal how to control AI and how to also debate about the AI use in the military. The AI use in the military is already in. It is used even in Ukraine, in the drones who can, detect which target is to be destroyed at the first moment, at the second moment, or the third moment. And it's about fastening making process extremely fast. The same situation is with the Israeli Iron Dome. Iron Dome is a system that is mostly managed by women, by female soldiers, who have, I think, 5 to 6 seconds to decide whether to shoot on the incoming rocket or to let it go to the vacant camp. And AI is helping, in the system, if the trajectory of the rocket is, or Shahid or whatever, is going to hit the habitated areas or not. So this is also about the use of the AI, even if we do not speak about it, but it's already in. And the future is, of course, there. I do not imagine, typical Android robots, Robocops walking with a lot of machines. I think it will be simply helping to make faster the processes and the decision making. And this is, as Philip said, it's important to make our strategic autonomy, our own systems, where we do not share the information with other countries, where we share information only with us. And that's how we implement the processes. Even in the foreign ministries, I have my inner question: what will happen with the analytic departments, because they are the masterminds of all the decision making in our ministries. And I can imagine, in a quite close future, that it can be really helpful to decide in some processes how to proceed in the future. Because, for example, you have a situation, let's say, I don't know, we are a small country, but anyway, how can the situation in the Hormuz Strait influence Slovakia, not only in the sense of oil? And then you can, last like 5 to 6 days where you will know that it will also influence the prices of the phosphates in Morocco and fertilizers in Europe. I think I already read some articles about that, even in Spain, that the prices will be roaring. But this is one of the use of the AI, that you can ask the system and it will, somehow know all the international treaties that you have, or calculating the situation and making the process faster and faster. Well, we are living in fast world, so I'm not surprised about that.
Okay, thank you. And I believe we have time for another question, that it would be, well, it was already mentioned, it's regarding the European military industry. So another major challenge for our European rearmament is the development of a common European defense industry to avoid duplication and fragmentation. So how could we build this European defense industry?
Yeah, that's a good one. Also, we talk a lot about scaling up the military production, we call it. So that is going further than what do we do with the defense industries. Connected to the threat perception and the military capacities we need to counter the threats we are dealing with, is that we have to increase the military production. And what I see is we have to have a more autonomous European defense industry, but we still have to get past the national autonomy. That's what I feel and see in Spain. That's what I felt in Poland. That's what we're looking for in the Netherlands. Okay, where can we find the connections with the industrial processes to produce more of what we need? And that is also connected to the defense plans we have, the national defense plans, regional defense plans, NATO and Europe, of course. And it's difficult. So I think what is needed to have a more common defense industry, a more common and shared military production, is to look at places where we haven't been looking. I've been reading about a massive military defense industry that is now being built up in Ukraine, because they have to. And they do it cheaper than the existing big defense companies. I've been reading about Poland taking South Korean tanks into production. So I think it's in a way, guerrilla military production we have to look for, because the threat is there. Thank you.
Well, I would say we are already building a European defense industry. We do have a lot of cooperations, and we obviously need more of it, as has been mentioned before. But we already talked about the Eurodrone, for example, as a project. There is another project which is called the European Sky Shield project. All those projects are projects that are European projects, because we all know that one country alone couldn't do it, and that we're stronger together. And I think that is the important part, that we have the awareness now and that we are doing it. What is also important to see there is that we are not just talking about countries that are member states of the European Union, but also about partners that are in Europe but not in the European Union. Germany, for example, also has a close cooperation with Great Britain. And in the case of Ukraine, they do have the battle experience. They know how modern warfare works. And I think that is something that we in Europe do not know yet. We need to learn about that. That is also why NATO, for example, is having exercise together with Ukraine, because we learn from them at the moment, and quite a lot. And I think that is very important to see, that this is something where we do prepare ourselves, and that the defense industry is getting stronger.
Thank you very much. I would start on the other way. I don't see the situation that critical as before. It's much better than last year, and it's much better, mucho mejor than in 2022. I think many of the countries, and especially you just woke up and saw the real situation in the world and started to, it's quite logical. First, you start to work in your own courtyard, you know, in tu propio campo. And then you start to watch your neighbors, what they do, and try to find a cooperation with them. There is we didn't speak about the SAFE, the SAFE, you know, the new model of financiation of the military, of the acquiring of military equipment, and it's working pretty well. And many of the countries are really trying to use and buy European. Firstly, European. I do agree with you, and the South Korean tanks that were, bought. And I do agree that we should firstly buy European, not only because of being kind of nationalist. It's not about that. But imagine that in the future you can still need spare parts. And if the spare parts are in your courtyard, it's much better than if they are in other continent. So European defense industry is waking up. It's not that bad as we painted it like 1 year or 2 years ago. I think the European Commissioner is doing a very excellent job, and ministries of defense of allies are doing a wonderful job. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, so that will be all for the panel. Thanks to our fantastic speakers for sharing their constructive opinion. And now the floor will be open for all our audience, so please feel free to address your own questions and concerns.
Thank you so much, Raul. My comment slash intervention is going to be a bit dense. Maybe I'm trying to be brief, but just warning you. First of all, I think we should remember that Eisenhower said sorry to the American public for creating the industrial military complex. So maybe we have to learn about that. Secondly, I think we have also to remember that we are discussing how to apply Trump's plans. Like Trump told us to build an independent military complex. Trump said us to buy American. That's what is going to happen because we don't have the capabilities yet. So in the short term, we are going to help him. So he told us to be more independent and rely less on him. So we are discussing how to apply his plan, not how to be independent from him. That's the second point. The third point is that I think we also have to remember that we have two kind of dialectics here. On the one side, we have open trade, open science, and we are very to my liking including our trade deals with many countries, with many blocs. And at the same time, we are talking about autarky as a good thing, and isolation as a good thing. And I don't think that both of them fit. I would think that food is more important for our survival than tanks, and we are relying more and more on food from other blocs. So I don't quite understand that part. Secondly, I don't think that Switzerland has many nuclear weapons, but they are quite safe. They don't rely on a big army or whatever. So I think that the financial part of our economies is I think more important than tanks and submarines. And the 2008 crisis, mostly caused by the US, and the earthquake that it caused has been more important than the Ukraine war for the general situation of the world and of our societies, of the evolution of our politics. And then there's also, of course, talking about AI and in general high tech. I think it's, of course, for example, building the computational capabilities is very expensive, that's for sure. But DeepSeek and all these models are literally free. They are out there, like they literally release them. Anyone having enough computational capabilities can run them. We don't have to develop a model. Well, of course, it will be great if we apply that idea of bringing Anthropic or these kind of companies, but the thing is that it's more about the intellectual development And I do think that the computational capabilities are are still cheaper than building a big, huge military complex. And let's also remember that the defense budget of the US, a big chunk of that goes mainly to labs. So there's this one of the godfathers of AI that fled to Canada because he literally said, it's difficult to be in at a lab in the US without having a part of your budget tied to the military budget. So I think we also have to remember that way more than tanks is about science. And of course, I'm biased to that because I'm working on a PhD in computational neuroscience. But I do think that it's way cheaper. Like having a lot of PhDs is cheaper than having several submarines. So, and in the long term, I think it's way more profitable. So yeah, sorry for the dense intervention. It's a lot of things, but thank you so much for listening. And I'm very eager to listen to your opinions.
I do not agree with you. When you say that DeepSeek, or what's the name of the Chinese platform, is for free, it is not for free.
Yeah, it is.
You are putting
released.
information in that, and that information has a value, huge amount of value. It's not only DeepSeek, it's also Gemini and ChatGPT. Every day we are putting tons and tons of information, sharing with them, with those private companies. And that information will have a value.
Yeah,
I mean, a value on marketing. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Will have a value of your customs, what you drink, what you eat, where you walk, how do you travel, and that's the information that it's huge value for all the
I meant that the model is.
I know
that we don't have to. Like,
I know. I do agree.
I didn't mean
but
that.
The equipment,
the
equipment to build such a huge platform is extremely expensive. I mean, you have to have. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but you have to have a huge amount of servers. Put somewhere in a cold, ambiente, somewhere probably in North Europe. I think there's something in Finland, in Sweden, whatever, even in northern Spain, and it's extremely expensive. And this is where we should start, because what I'm worried, even from the commercial point of view, that we are sharing this information with the marketing companies who can sell it in the future. It's also about security in a way, but it's also about buying European in a huge way. Thank you.
I don't know if you wanted to answer directly. I don't want to, but okay.
No. I agree with what he said.
Okay. Well, I mean, it is easy to be a saint if you live in paradise. And I think for a very long time in Europe, we lived as if we are saints in paradise because everything was peaceful, everything was fine, and we were very happy. And I think in 2022 we realized, oh, this world can be more dangerous to us than we thought for a very long time. And I think it was quite a wake-up call. That, plus the elections in the United States, showed us that we have to take our future in our own hands. Since it took a while for us to realize that, I think we are at a point now where we do have to be pragmatic and where we do have to get started. And I think we are doing that. We talked about that before. We heard that the situation that we're in is much better than it was last year or than it was in 2022. And I do think that what we are doing is in our own European interest and that we are following our needs at the moment in Europe. And I see that as very important because we do have a need to be able to stand on our own feet. And this is something that we have to learn, that we have to grow up in this world. And I think that's the process that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, the military-industrial complex, it's for me a difficult one. I think the chair of the military committee, the former chair of the military committee said, if you want peace, you have to arm yourself. Even our king said it, we have to arm ourselves to maintain peace. And I think it's very exceptional realizing that we in Europe have 3 generations, if you're not counting the Cold War, that have been living in peaceful circumstances. And from a more personal perspective, I've been in a few missions. I have been armed and I never fired a shot. But is that because I had a weapon? So that is the difficulty. I prefer not to have a lot of weapons because it's easier to use them, but you can't do it without it. So that is the difficulty in the times we're in.
Thank you. My question is more aligned with defense industry and following up on Guillermo's question before. How could we improve cooperation in terms of defense industry? Because I'm thinking about several pan-European projects that we have, for example, the Future Combat Air System or the main ground combat system, that are having a lot of difficulties because companies fight amongst themselves. And there's like this structure in each project of co-leaders. And there's always a lot of bickering about who leads the project, what the project should be focused on. And for example, I remember recent news that the main ground combat system is supposed to deploy, probably they are thinking to enter full production, not just prototyping, at around 2040 or 2045, which is pretty late considering the threats that we face right now. So yeah, my question is in that sense.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I've been in, I think it was the EDA project developing the main battle tank, and I think the first prototype will be ready 2030, and it will be manned. So I was sitting there for one day. It was 1 week, all companies together discussing, with Indra being in the lead. So that is like a typical company that is in the lead and has a lot of subcontractors working with them. But it is how it is. But I think next to that process, those processes, long-term processes developing and industry developing, I think we're now developing under the pressure of the threats we're under. I don't want to scare you, but there are threats. That we are able to produce what is needed. So, and I think lacking investments, that is a big theme, I think, for smaller companies to start producing. But we see more smaller firms producing dual-use goods that are needed in the battlefield.
I can tell you one good example of a European defense industry that is working very well, and it's called Airbus. It has started with a civilian stuff, and now, you know, in the military aircraft, it's really one of the global leaders, and it's an excellent example of how can Europe cooperate together. I'm quite sorry that Slovakia is not that much taking part in some parts, but yes, we are trying to enter. But when starting about the big projects, so there is already one. And to build the airplane is much more complicated than to build a tank still. And I think the machines like A400 that is made also here in Spain is a real leader in world transportation. And the only one thing is, as Will said, that in case of the military aircraft and other military equipment, we lack the battle experience. And when your military is acquiring or buying some stuff, it has to have two things. Well, every military production has to have two things to be bought by the army. First, battle experience, and second, it has to be bought by your national army. And then you will succeed. Because you have tons of producers in Europe who don't have any kind of experience with the sales to the military, and nor even the experience of the battle. And as Philip said, many of European products are being used and challenged in Ukraine, and they gain the experience, because in the battle you gain the experience. I mean the equipment, not only the soldiers. And this is something that can help in the future.
I think this point about the airplanes is very important. Airplanes are very difficult to build. And the question to me is also, is that the future of defense? Because we see in Ukraine and in other regions of the world how important drones have become in the last years. And drones, of course, you need the hardware, the technology of how to get them to fly, but you also need artificial intelligence. And here we're back with the question of strategic autonomy. What if we use artificial intelligence for the defense industry, but artificial intelligence that is provided by another country that then cuts us off? We couldn't use drones anymore. We couldn't use integrated systems where airplanes are connected to tanks, for example. So I think talking about defense industry also means that we have to develop technology. We need researchers, as you mentioned before, to actually get there. And this is something where we have to think also into the future. We do have good examples of European cooperation. We also do have the Eurofighter, for example, as an airplane that worked or works, and that has been a cooperation that functions. Of course, we are many countries in Europe and we discuss about things, but especially with the pressure from outside, we have always been very good at getting there and agreeing and getting the job done. And I think that is the point where we're at again. And I am very confident, having seen the development in the last years, that we are getting to the point where we do have so much cooperation in Europe that we do reach strategic autonomy.
So, yeah, that would be all. Oh.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for your interventions. My name is Valentina, and my question is related to the actual geopolitical situation. Do you believe that increasing the investment in the defense industry will also increase that sense of crisis? Or by the opposite, it will be considered more like the strengthening of the security of the country? Because I think people, as civilians, they do believe that security, of course, is an important matter, but from the civil society point of view, increasing of, if the state increases the investment, it will mean like a indirect way to say we are going to war. So I don't know what you think. Thank you.
Valentina, thank you very much for that lovely question. I can say in behalf of my country, the military exports raised, on a huge level in the past 2 or 3 years, and it has helped a lot, to how to say it, improve our economy in a way. Defense industry is also part of the industry. It is also giving the people, the work and the people the job. And believe me or not, it's also a huge technological jump forwards. Unfortunately, the biggest technological jump in the human's history was during the World War II. We have started with the biplanes, when we have finished with the extremely fast rockets, as a mankind. And the same situation is applying now. It's not only about speaking and talking. Many thousands of people and engineers are really developing new systems, new workouts, and the industries are running. So it's a challenge. I understand that the people may ask, are we in war? Well, we are more or less secure, let's go that way. But the defense industry is an integral part of our economy. I'm speaking about Slovakia.
I think it is important to talk about security also, that we do not create a false sense of security that does not exist. We don't want anyone to panic, we don't want to be warmongering or anything else like that, but the best way, as Hul said before, to prepare for peace is to prepare for war. Because how would we secure ourselves if it wasn't for being able to defend ourselves? We don't want anyone to panic or to overly be worried about things that you shouldn't be worried about, but we also want people to understand that the situation is not like it was 6 years ago. The situation simply has changed, and the security situation of Europe is not the same anymore. And that is something that people should understand, because it can affect everyone. Of course, we do hope for the best, and we do hope that we maintain peace in the parts of Europe where we still have peace, because in Ukraine you don't have peace. But we don't know. We don't know what can happen in the future. And I'm sure that everyone here remembered the Apagon that happened last year, my first thought was cyber attack. Because that is something that is realistic, that could happen. And I think we also need to take that into consideration. Those things could happen and that we need to be prepared for that, because that is something that is going to affect every one of us if it should happen.
Yeah, that's what I had in mind. Social resilience. That's like the also big theme, how to take care of yourself. So what do you do if you can't get cash from the wall, or you don't have cash, your mobile phone is not working, you're not getting any news. So that is connected to sort of the hybrid threats that we're dealing with, the gray zone we're living in, still in the beautiful environment here in Madrid. But things are happening, and it hurts. Like the massive investments and the budget raises for defense are hurting. So the governments, our governments, have to explain that to our people. And in the meantime, the people are being asked to take care of themselves for an X days, 72 hours, I believe, or longer. So it's change of mindset.
So unfortunately we ran out of time, but thanks for your great questions and thanks to our experts for sharing their valuable time. I believe it was a very constructive experience. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again for being here. I'm Carlos Gomez, and as part of the organizing team of MEU European Union Spain 2025, and having served as chairman of the council during the simulation, my role today is to provide a brief analytical overview of what we observed during the course of the debate in regards to climate migrants. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge the work behind the proposal itself. The original text was developed by our content team, namely by Isabel Montes Muñoz and Emilia Bauer, whose effort and intellectual contribution were instrumental in shaping a file that was both ambitious and capable of generating such a rich and structured debate. That being said, let me begin by briefly situating the proposal. The file under discussion was a proposal for a regulation establishing a common European approach to climate and environmental migration. This is by nature a complex and evolving policy area. The proposal itself emerges from a growing mismatch between reality and regulation. Across the globe, climate change is already generating displacement through rising sea levels, desertification, and increasingly frequent extreme weather events. Just for you to have an idea, over 150 climate disasters have happened throughout 2025 that required humanitarian aid. That's a quite large number. However, existing legal frameworks, both internationally and within the European Union, have not yet fully adapted to this phenomenon. In that sense, what participants were dealing with was not a settled policy field, but rather an emerging one. And this is precisely what made the proposal particularly engaging. It wasn't simply about interpreting or adjusting existing rules. It was about exploring how far those rules could or should be extended. It required participants to navigate uncertainty, to define concepts that are still contested, and to take positions on an issue where there is no clear consensus, even at the highest levels of policymaking. From an evaluative perspective, several key points of tension quickly became apparent. First, the issue of definition and recognition. Should the European Union formally recognize climate and environmental migrants as a distinct legal category? And if so, on what basis? Second, the question of responsibility. To what extent should the European Union assume a leading role in addressing what is fundamentally a global phenomenon? And how should that responsibility be distributed among member states? And third, the question of feasibility. Even where there is agreement on the existence of the problem, there is far less agreement on the capacity of institutions to respond in terms of resources, administrative structures, and political willingness. These tensions did not remain abstract. They translated directly into the dynamics of the Council. The three broad factions emerged, each reflecting a different way of approaching the issue. On one side, those who fully supported the proposal. For them, this was a necessary and forward-looking initiative. They viewed climate migration as an inevitable development and argued that the European Union should act proactively rather than reactively in order to be prepared. On the other side, a group that expressed a high degree of skepticism, not only towards migration policy, but in some cases towards the underlying assumptions linking climate change and displacement. Their position focused on limits of competence, limits of capacity, and the risk of creating legal frameworks that could be difficult to implement or sustain. Between these two positions, a third group articulated a more nuanced perspective. These participants strongly supported environmental and climate action, yet approached migration policy with caution. They did not deny the existence of climate-induced displacement, but questioned whether migration policy should be the primary instrument to address it, and whether the European Union is structurally prepared to manage such an approach. From an organizational standpoint, what is particularly worth highlighting is that these divisions were not superficial. They were consistent, they were structured, and they closely mirrored real debates within the European Union. The complexity of the topic did not lead to fragmentation, but rather to the formation of clear political positions. Participants were not simply reacting, they were positioning themselves within a broader policy and ideological landscape. This is in many ways where the true value of the simulation lies. Because beyond the legal text, what participants experienced was the difficulty of policy making in a context defined by uncertainty, competing priorities, and the need for compromise. A process in which advancing a proposal is not only about ambition, but also about ensuring that such ambition can be translated into something that is politically and practically viable. Ultimately, what made this proposal particularly significant was not that it provided definitive answers, rather that it raised the right questions, as it is, in the end, a simulation. And in doing so, required participants to engage with the kind of complexity that defines European policymaking today. With that in mind, I will now leave the floor to Mr. Ambassador for his speech, and then we'll proceed with a roundtable discussion. Thank you.
Muy bien, very well. I will be again speaking Spanish because I really thought it was a Spanish-speaking session, so I'm terribly sorry about that. But first of all, my huge respect to all of you because you have excellent level of English, and very much surprised because in Spain I do not, touch with the people and that are that good in English as you are guys. So my real appreciation and my highest respect. Okay, so cambio en español para un rato entonces, porque ya me lo preparé en español, lo siento. Refugiados climáticos es un tema donde, lo reconozco yo, no estoy muy en casa, no domino este tema como lo dominan ustedes o como lo dominas tú, pero es un gran reto y lo estamos topando prácticamente cada día. Yo vengo de un país donde también tenemos problemas climatológicos, pero no tan fuertes como aquí, o no tan fuertes como en el sur de Europa, o no tan fuertes como yo estuve antes destinado en Cuba, y allí he vivido un huracán, pero el Irma, el potente chico, ¿no? Ok. El nexo, yo le escogí el tema para un poquito, modifiqué un poquito el tema para vincular el tema de la defensa con el tema de la clima, a ver si os guste. Así, esta segunda sesión no es un tema aparte, es la continuación lógica de nuestra charla sobre seguridad. En la doctrina estratégica actual, el cambio climático es definido como el multiplicador de amenazas, ¿no? Como el threat multiplier, por excelencia, por supuesto. No hablamos solo de ecología, hablamos de la propia estabilidad de los propios estados. Ustedes saben muy bien que es en realidad un refugiado climático, si no, yo lo que busqué y consulté conmigo mismo también con mi ministerio para ser un poquito más sabio, ¿no? Cuando hablamos de refugiados climáticos nos referimos a personas que se ven obligadas a abandonar sus hogares no por balas o bombas, sino porque su entorno ha dejado de existir. Son los agricultores de Sahel, que lo notáis aquí en España mucho más que en mi país, cuya tierra se ha vuelto literalmente piedra por la sequía. Son familias en estados insulares donde el mar ya contamina sus pozos de agua potable. Y a diferencia de los refugiados políticos, estas personas se enfrentan a una invisibilidad jurídica. La Convención de Viena de 1951 no los reconoce. No huyen de una persecución política o por religión o por ideología, sino que son perseguidos por una naturaleza alterada por la actividad humana. Esto los convierte en uno de los grupos más vulnerables del mundo, carentes de un estatus legal claro y de protección internacional. ¿Por qué la defensa debe mirar el clima? No hay un proyectil, una bomba, que detenga una crisis migratoria causada por el hambre. La conexión es circular y es peligrosa. El cambio climático destruye las tierras y agota el agua. La escasez de recursos genera inestabilidad política. La inestabilidad provoca conflictos armados y estos inevitablemente expulsan a miles de personas de sus hogares. La migración climática no es una elección. Tú no escoges dónde naces. Es una huida ante la imposibilidad de sobrevivir. Si no invertimos en resiliencia climática hoy, las capacidades militares que discutimos en la primera parte se verán desbordados mañana gestionando crisis humanitarias masivas y protegiendo fronteras frente a quienes ya no tienen nada que perder. Ahora voy a decirles algo de Eslovaquia para que sepan a qué nos enfrentamos nosotros, aunque como he dicho en el inicio, no es a la escala que vivís aquí en esta maravillosa tierra. Nosotros somos, bueno, sabéis, landlocked country, no tenemos acceso al mar, pero somos algo como un espejo para Europa. Incluso en nuestro país las señales son claras. Los montes Tatras sufren una degradación forestal sin precedentes por el clima extremo. Nuestro río Danubio, el principal, que viene de Alemania y termina en en Rumanía, es vital para la energía y el comercio y enfrenta sequías que amenazan nuestra soberanía económica. Si nosotros, con una economía sólida, sentimos esta presión, imagínense el impacto que tienen otros países que no tienen recursos económicos. La inestabilidad climática allí se traduce inevitablemente en presión migratoria en las fronteras que tanto España como el resto de los socios europeos tenemos que enfrentar juntos. Nuestra posición o nuestra postura es más o menos pragmática. La mejor gestión migratoria es evitar que la migración sea necesaria. A través de la agencia que aquí la llamáis AESIT, nosotros la llamamos la nuestra Slovak Aid, exportamos nuestra tecnología de gestión hídrica y agricultura sostenible para que las comunidades locales en África o Asia puedan resistir sus tierras. Os voy a decir que en nuestro enfoque de la ayuda en desarrollo, en África tenemos como un país mimado Kenia, que ahí tenemos diplomáticos que se dedican especialmente a la ayuda del desarrollo de la agricultura sostenible. Apostamos por Europa con fronteras coordinadas y seguras, pero que también lidere la creación de un marco legal para proteger a los desplazados climáticos. Y estamos comprometidos, como mi país, a ser el arsenal de la defensa europea, pero también un puente de tecnología y solidaridad para enfrentar la mayor amenaza de nuestro siglo. Bueno, aquí vamos a hablar horas y horas y no vamos a encontrar solución, como es buena costumbre. A mí me alegra de que estamos hablando de este tema porque es cada vez más notable y presente en los foros multinacionales. Y no se habla solamente de defensa, no es todo de ello. Y me agradezco profundamente que habéis escogido este tema justamente vosotros. Y ahora voy a terminar con una idea que me gustó muchísimo. Estáis siguiendo lo que pasa con Artemis 2, ¿no? Hoy volaron creo que hoy por la noche estuvieron a la distancia más larga del planeta. Y os voy a sugerir ver en Netflix una serie que la voz le dio Denzel Washington y se llama Our Universe. No sé si la habéis visto. ¿La habéis visto? Tiene creo que 6 partes y es realmente maravillosa. Y una de, creo que, no sé cómo se llama, la señora esa que está volando con los 4 tipos ahí, se me olvida el nombre ahora, pero le han hecho una entrevista, ¿no? Cómo ve de atrás, o sea, cómo se ve desde arriba nuestro planeta, nuestro barco, y le dice, tú le quieres dar un abrazo. Pequeño, ¿no? Lo ves así, lo quieres mimar. Y me dicen, pero usted, ¿qué quiere hacer? O sea, ¿cómo, cuando usted vuelva y tal? No, ahí cambias por completo el tema del pensamiento, de la filosofía interna. Yo creo que todo el mundo debería volar así de alto, aunque bueno, si no fuera tan costoso, para darse cuenta de lo que realmente estamos perdiendo aquí. Mucha suerte y espero tener buen debate con vosotros, aunque reconozco aquí no soy en casa.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I wanted to thank you for being here. We will be starting off, as they have both introduced, our second and last panel of today, which will be on climate migrants. Before presenting my amazing panelists, I will present myself. Welcome, everyone. I'm Ana Reina. I'm part of the direct board of Vita Spain, and I will be, for today's direction, the moderator. Now we can go to the presentation. First of all, I want to introduce the Ambassador Jurek Domaga, who is the Ambassador of the Slovak Republic to Spain, with accreditation both in Morocco and Andorra. He also has such an amazing background, which combines journalism and diplomacy, and with key roles within the Slovak Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And lastly, his diplomatic postings, both in Havana and here in Madrid. I think that they will give us such an amazing insight on the diplomatic insights on it. Then we can continue with Carlos. Carlos graduated in both law and political science, and he's a specialist in strategic communications and partnerships. And he has been the institutional communication advisor for the Spanish government. He also was the former president of Vita Europe and the founder of MEU Spain as we understand it now, because before it was always done in Granada, and then he made it so it will move from city to city. And lastly, we have Sofia. Sofia has been a participant in MEU Spain 2025 in one of the chambers that debated and amended this regulation. Oops. Sorry. First of all, I wanted to start with Carlos. No worry, it's okay, thank you. Because as the ambassador has mentioned, with the 1951 Geneva Convention, with it and this regulation, what we want is to cover a legal protection gap, because, as he said, there are people who has been displaced because of environmental factors. They are not considered a category itself, but they are included in the economic migrants. So I wanted to ask you if, with the final version of the law, if you think it really covers the needs of these displaced people.
Well, absolutely. I have no doubt that this is a strong legal framework that is protected by. I remember that there was a discussion whether it should be a regulation or a directive. It ended up, if I'm not mistaken, as a regulation, and that just like that discussion, that debate about even like the legal framework or how to tackle it, it said a lot about how serious was the discussion. I think that like the work of, as I said, the content team behind it was amazing. It covered actually that preamble, the Geneva Convention, but as well the work behind the, let's say, from the participants was simply amazing, in which they defined the scope of this regulation, and as well, it defined who is let's say a migrant that is affected by climate, right? So, yeah, I mean, for sure, that's I kind of agree with that.
Thank you so much. Before continuing with the diplomatic point of view, I wanted to ask Sofia, which were the key points during this MEU regarding this regulation?
I think that it's on, right? Okay. I think that I would say like two parts, or I would like to point out two themes or two topics in this text that were like very, I don't know how to explain it, but were very thankfully for pointing it out. And I think that first it was, as Carlos mentioned, who is really or truly a climate refugee, because or a climate migrant, and that is the first one, because one of the biggest discussions in the chamber was who is a migrant or a refugee, what's the difference, and how can affect if we call them migrants or if we call them refugees. So in the final version, I think it's migrants, right? And I think that's very important, because in law, one of the things that we just know from the first day on the university is to know how the language is very important. And I think that is the biggest discuss that we took. And the second thing that I wanted to point it out, and just that, and I would finish, it was that the other biggest problem or the biggest discuss was about how can we do the reparto, like of the migrants in this case, and that was like very difficult to agree with all the participants, because we were not aware enough about how can affect the state members of the UE, and I think that two things are the most important things.
Thank you. Now, I think we can pass to the diplomatic point of view, because I wanted to mention to the ambassador that the initial version of the regulation allowed climate displaced individuals, to apply for protection in the member state where they intended to reside. However, the final version removed that choice, and it said that they must apply strictly in the member state where they first arrived. And I wanted to ask you, from the diplomatical standpoint, especially from a country that is an inland country like Slovakia, if you think that way you can prevent secondary movements, or it places an unfair burden on frontline Mediterranean countries.
Tough question. Thank you very much. I was expecting that when we start speaking about migration, I have to defend strictly the policies of my country. I'm sorry about that. And I have to say that pact we are really defending a slightly different position than your country. But still, we see that the best job that we have to do is in the countries of origin. And there is where we should be more united and strengthened. And as I said at my beginning, at the very beginning, the best way how to deal with the migration itself is in the country of origin, because then what is in the process in between is becoming politicized, and it's becoming strictly, and even in some countries influencing the electoral results, and it's not quite fair. I think we should be more stronger, and with the strong institutions that we have and organizations that we have within the EU in the countries of origin. I know that in case of the climate changes that are strictly advancing, it will be a big challenge, but we don't have simply the other option. And I'm not I don't have a crystal ball that can tell you how we'll develop the planet in 20 or, well, in the current situation, not even tomorrow. But in sense of the speaking about the common sense, you know, even in my country, we have, even in Spain, you have regions that are less developed or they have more challenges than the other regions. And your strategy is to have a balanced development in all the country, even in the rural areas of Spain, where currently you have a, you call it España vaciada, no? And I don't know why I call it vaciada, because there is still something. Even the houses, you know, whatever, but something is there. But you cannot concentrate the population on one single point. Then you have a problem with the life. But then you have a problem with the prices of the real estate. And then if you have a problem of the real estate, you have a frustrated young generation. And if you have a frustrated young generation, you have an extremist vote. But I have switched from one point to another, but in the current world, everything is strictly linked. And I would pass the big question mark to the experts in agriculture, who should deal in the future in respect with the nature, in respect with the soil that they have. As I said, I was posted in Cuba, and whatever we say, but in Cuba I ate local stuff. So how come then in Bratislava or in Madrid, you go to the supermarket and you find mango? That's a big question. Yeah, because the people ask it, the people love it, whatever. But at the same time, you don't have cerezas, cherries, no? That were always planted in Spain. You have avocado or avocado, planted in southern Spain. By the way, aguacate that is, you know, consuming lots of water. But we are not asking about the water, the origin of the water and the energy that is costing. Then we are not asking about the production of the olive oil, because all the advocate is, you know, literally consuming all the water. So let's speak about the responsible agriculture, and not only in our countries, but also being kind of an inspiring model how to make agriculture sustainable for the future. I know that it's very difficult to convince even my wife, you know, that you cannot have tropical fruits in your supermarket. I mean, logical, because it's not logical, but you have them. And who is paying for that? It's not us. Well, you're paying the final price, but who is paying the real price is the agriculture in the countries of origin. We are changing their formation, their way of behavior. Well, our marketing or the market needs are changing their behavior and changing their agriculture and their natural customs. I had the experience, and I can say that even to the camera. In Cuba, the agriculture was changed forcibly during the Soviet era, because before they were, you know, all the production of the bread was made from corn, as all the Latin America. Then they switched into the cereals in the 70s. And in the 90s, they found out that there are no cereals in Cuba, but they are still maintaining bread made on cereals. And, you know, common sense sometimes, and the common sense of our ancestors can give us a reply to many things that we are dealing bad these days. And I can say in the case of my country, you know, there's an expression called melioration. I don't know if you know what is that. Melioracja in Slovak. That means that you're dealing with the mountains and you're cleaning the channels, the natural channels, so that when there is a, you know, flash flood or whatever, the water is canalized directly to the bigger rivers. And our ancestors used to clean that channels in 100 years ago, even 50, 60, 70 years ago. Nowadays, nobody is doing that, not even in Spain. And then we are surprised by the flash floods. And really surprised. How come it happened? We are building houses in the areas that everybody knows that will be flooded. It is happening because the market requires it, you know, whatever, so the people want to build a house next to the sea or whatever. And they say, well, there is some map that says it can be flooded, but nothing happens. Then the question number one is there any security company, insurance company who will pay they will accept your insurance for that house? No answer. I'm, switching one topic to another, but it's all linked and related. But my main message is to have a responsible agriculture in the future. And one of the biggest, as you call retos in Spanish, will be actually what is happening in the Hormuz Strait if it does not open. I don't know if you know, but the production, when you produce the gas, the natural gas, you have a secondary production of sulfate, sulfato, no? The sulfate that is used to produce the phosphates, to extract the phosphates for the natural fertilizers. They are extremely important in the modern agriculture. I don't know if you know, but the Saudi Arabia of modern fertilizers is Morocco. And they are officially declaring that they have a problem. And on the mass agriculture that we are using, and we are, well, defending, because we are comfortable with that, it's not sustainable. And I'm sure that we have a brilliant brains in Europe who will give an answer to that question. But if not, we have a serious problem. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really like the quote that you said both in your opening statement and now, and it's really reflective for all of us to think about it. But first, I think Carlos wants to say something.
I wanted to make a comment on Mr. Ambassador's remarks. I think that I can agree with you that everything is linked, and not only that, but of course, like the proposal that we were discussing, climate migrants, it's not only about the impact of that. It's not only about that proposal, but let's say the legal framework that we work on. For instance, you were mentioning about defense and about industry, about agriculture. In my case, I've worked as an advisor for the Ministry of Industry and Tourism. I can tell that not only the government of Spain is working on more sustainable options for growing the industry through a new law, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's been right now being discussed in the Congress, but as well in hundreds of countries, the new strategies that are being settled in terms of industry, of policy making in industry, it's all towards green and sustainable future. So I was just wanted to underline that indeed, of course, that this proposal, it's certainly relevant, but it won't work. I mean, first of all, we need to prevent, and then we solve through that proposal. But we need to keep with some extra efforts on other areas.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't know if you wanted to say something else, Mr. Ambassador.
If I start, I will not finish by the evening.
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
Yes, why not? I mean, yeah. I'm the old school. In a sense that sometimes I have the impression, and I think I'm the only one, and I'm not the extremist. I repeat that. I think in Europe sometimes we are doing experiments pretty much fast, and then we are asking, so why the others are not following us? And you have traveled outside of European Union. I'm sure that you did. You have been, let's say, in Morocco for a fin de semana trip or whatever, no? You have been to Latin America, maybe, some of you. And you can ask the models that those people, are applying, for example, for the use of transport. While in Europe, we are debating and defending the electric cars. You see the electric car in the streets of Madrid or whatever, and you see only one person inside. You see driver. That's all. Yeah, you don't see the car is packed. Go to Mexico, whatever, you see the cars are not empty. I mean, if I travel from one point to other point, there are minimum 2 or 3 passengers. I'm switching the topic to another point. I think, well, but the China is a different case, but in Europe we have decided to use the electric cars in a very strict and fast model that is not responding the real necessities of the citizens. And I will tell you why. And we can discuss about that. I told you I'm the old school. I'm defending the industries also of my country because we are the biggest car makers in Europe, if not in the world. And I defend the hybrids and the combustion, not the diesels, diesel as they called it. Let's say that you are a family, that you have 2 kids, you are, let's say, 40, 45 years, and you are deciding to buy a new car. Let's say that you live in, you are a Spanish middle class, and that you live somewhere in southern Madrid, and you are bombed, you know, constantly to buy electric car. Okay, so you buy it, but your question number 1 was where I will charge it. That's a question, normal one, huh? And if I charge it, so how long it will last? To take my kids to the school, to see my abuela el fin de semana, no, to go Semana Santa to Cádiz, no, forget about it. Because you will not find a charging station. If yes, you will find it, but some of them are broken. If not broken, so some parts are stolen or it's not working. That's the way, that's the real situation. And when I speak with and there are many of them, good brains in Spain who are dealing with the automotive industries, they say we overlap we have switched, and the same situation happened in Slovakia. We have switched from point A to point B, but in a very fast way. I mean, the major user of the future electric car should be a middle class, not a car that is costing, you know, 35,000 plus. I mean, the new electric one. And in my opinion, the electric car, yes, but as a second car, cheap car, and rechargeable in your kitchen. Yeah, there are models for that. It doesn't have to be Mercedes-Benz, that you charge in your proper garage. But something that you take the battery, you know, like a Kopfer, as the German said, and you go to the kitchen and you charge it, and the next morning you have another 150 kilometers. And it's usable, even if you live in Usera, or if you live in Independent Republic of Vallecas, or even if you live in Getafe, or in Alcobendas, or whatever, no? And you can charge it, because you are not implying that something is very modern, it's very chic. Yeah, it is. But you can't make a half of population frustrated because it cannot buy a new car, because it's a model that we are living in. And I see the frustration, not even in Spain, even also in my country, that people are angry because 10 years ago they could afford a new car. Now they are fighting to buy the second-hand car. And now, I switched the model because I have, catch the... Sí, no hablo con el micrófono, perdón. As I said, I'm the old school. I think we have to make changes, but we cannot do them so quickly so that the population is not ready for that. I mean, what I saw in the article today morning in the Slovak newspapers, that people are, Googling more electric cars than 5 years ago because of the situation in Iran, because of the roaring prices of the gas, and especially people are trying to get rid of the diesel cars because it will be even more expensive to maintain it. But I think in the middle, that's a quite big challenge for these European car makers, that we have forced them to switch into the electric production, and then we were all surprised that they were lagging behind the Japanese car makers, especially our Chinese car makers. While I see what I said before, common sense is the best answer, and a good example. Well, I cannot make it as the ambassador promotion of the concrete car maker, but I think the Japanese did an excellent solution because they were not switching from one model to another model in a day. They have found a midway. I don't mean the island in the Pacific Ocean, but in the midst, with so-called hybrids. So, yeah, that's all for now, and let's debate.
Thank you so much. I think that progressive changes that include most of the population are always the best ways. So please, Carlos, don't make it like super quick, but make it brief,
I have to
please.
speak about it because
Yeah, but brief, please.
I mean, the Spanish government for some months have implemented a measure called Autoplus. I don't know if does anybody know what is it? Basically, this measure gives 5,000 euros to any citizen who wants to pay for an electric car. So that means, and that it's that want to buy an electric car, but more concretely, a European made card. So there are already measures that are trying to be done through the government to make feasible the purchase and to make it more competitive. Besides that, the European Union has developed since the post-pandemic era budget only directed for car industries that are focused on electric cars. Therefore, it is true that we're not there yet. Certainly, I agree with you that cars aren't that as affordable as we wish. But measures are being taken, certainly, in terms both for the European Union and I can say by heart from the Spanish government.
Thank you so much. And also, brief, please.
Yo no me rindo. Yes, I appreciate it, but still, because I will go more into the details. In the combustion and combustion, we are the leaders. In electric cars, Chinese are the leaders. And it's like that. And when you mentioned, the electric cars, okay, I agree with you that there is a good made help, etc., etc., etc. But it's because still the engine is the only one part of the car. It's a huge assembly. But there is not a single European battery. If you say yes, so the articles in the battery are Chinese still, because we don't have the source, because we were sleeping, for the last 20 years, and we don't have the access to all the minerals that are necessary for the production of the batteries. That was the point number one. The point number two is the idea of reuse of batteries, and we still think it's ecological. I say it is not ecological up to now. Third, all the electric cars are extremely heavy. I mean, if you take Fiat 500, the small, the little matchbox, and the electric vehicle and the engine vehicle, and you compare the weight, it's a huge difference in favor of the normal engine. What is the result? I will be, technically, my brother is working in the automotive industry, so I know about it. When you have a heavy vehicle, the first thing that the biggest pressure that is going is used. I'm sorry, how to say it is. Biggest pressure that is done is on your tires, pneumáticos. And believe me or not, the electric vehicles are so heavy that there are much more particles coming from the tires that we are later drinking that you can even imagine. I know the German, tire makers, even Michelin is doing, some studies how to improve the situation. But what I want to say at the very end, that saying that driving electric is the only ecological alternative is not truth. There is always a combination. I mean, let's not convince everybody that I'm green. I'm 100%. You're not 100% green when you're driving an electric car. You cannot be green. You are green if you drive bicycle, not the electric one. Then you are completely green and tired and road and red and blue and whatever. But do not paint something and rainbows on your wall if it's not like that. I know the air is much fresher, while using electric cars. That's your feeling. Yeah, it can be, but you cannot see the other particles. The medics will see them, or the quality of the water will see them. Yeah, we can debate it and follow that. Yeah, sorry.
Something else you want to say? Nothing. Okay, fair. Thank you. Then my next question is to you, Carlos. Is from Carlos. Carlos. Yeah. Well, the light goes up. It's on Article 26 because I remember from being there that there was quite a controversy about it because it said that even if people are transferred to certain countries in large groups during a disaster or afterwards, every individual must still submit their own particular and a separate application for protection. I wanted to ask you about it and for you to give us your legal standpoint, because I just wanted to know if you think it is essential for the safeguard of the principle of no return or no refoulement, or it will cause an administrative bottleneck in a fast-track emergency due to bureaucracy.
I mean, it's always a dilemma. Like there is not an easy choice, especially when we're talking about an emergency or a humanitarian aid, right? There was a lot of discussion some years ago when we had the refugee crisis in the European Union. And, you know, it's just simply a different sort of emergency, but we face more or less the same sort of challenge, which is what do we do? At what extent can we, how quick we can proceed? Shall we check one by one, case by case? I mean, of course that there should be some sort of individual check-in. And I think that that's a bit like the conclusion that at least in the simulation was done, and it's that although, you know, there are concrete, let's say, collective measures, you have to evaluate if, let's say, this individual comes from this region, comes from this situation, has these certain issues that requires to be moved away. Yeah, certainly, in my humble opinion, it is necessary. Just like any other person that makes ask for a visa or ask for even for a refugee status, it requires an individual request. So I think that that's perfectly feasible. Of course, that it will take a bit longer than it could be a collective acceptance, but. Migration policy, that's how it works. I mean, in the end, it has to go case by case.
Okay. Thank you. And also, I have a question both for Jurek and the ambassador and you. And it is on another one of the amendments, because it was one of the most striking ones in my humble opinion, is that it was added a means test for, it was the addition of a means test for return support. I mean, what I mean by that, to receive EU financial aid to go home, a person must now prove that they have no other means to pay for it, for their own transportation and reintegration. And to you, Mr. Ambassador, I wanted to ask you if you think these amendments balances fiscal accountability with the need to protect those vulnerable people, and to you, Carlos, if you think this creates an unnecessary hurdle for those vulnerable ones.
Start, Carlos, please.
From the perspective of the migrant, I don't think that there is any issue. I think that the dilemma comes more from the receptor over the senders, right? Of course, it will be. I mean, it's really positive that. I mean, for a migrant, that let's say the governments help to return financially. I mean, I think that that's objectively positive from the perspective of the migrant. Another thing, of course, is the fiscal and financial management from the governments, which is, I mean, that's a different story. You can discuss about it, but I mean, someone that is needing help, I don't think that will disagree to have some financial investments.
I didn't mean it's okay. I didn't mean it from that way, but in the way that people, those displaced people, we have to show the means test how it will be done from that perspective. Not that much of I want to go back to my country. Please give me money if that's okay. I don't know if I didn't. I don't know
yeah,
if I explained myself.
sorry, I didn't get
It's okay, don't worry.
the question. So basically, in any visa, work, especially like working visas, it requires a means test, and it can be more flexible. It can be more strict, but I think that it's something that is certainly common. So of course it can be a slightly counterproductive, but I don't think, I mean, as long as it has, like, you can present any sort of document. For instance, I don't know, like a bill that you have recently, okay? So, I mean, it very much depends on the government and, let's say, the legislator, at what extent, at what level of being strict you want to get. So, I mean, as long as it's not like extremely strict requirements, it's something that it happens in everyday's life for a migrant. I mean, it's something that is certainly necessary.
Great, thank you. Now, you, Mr. Amasa.
Thank you very much. This is a tough topic, as all the questions that you put. You should work for CNN. Migration should be organized at the very much beginning. Let's start with it. We need workforce in my country. You need workforce in your country. My government is now dealing with many governments involved, with Serbia, with I think Uzbekistan lately, even the Philippines. How to India, of course, how to attract the educated workforce. Then the question that you put, Ana Reina, is a process afterwards. I still think that if you start to pay the migrants to leave your country, you are converting your country into the target. I'm not speaking as a politician. I'm not a politician, and I said I'm not an extremist. But the migration should not be targeted to one member country and not to other member countries, because at the very end we will all pay for it. Someone will have to pay it, because in the migration crisis in 2015, was it, or 16, I can't remember, when all the Syrians, jumped all over my country and Czech Republic, and they all landed in Germany. So the question is that they were not looking for freedom, they were looking for money. Because the normal, would be if I'm leaving the war, I'll stay in the first free and normal country. That is the question. Well, as I repeat, and coming back to the source, the migration should be organized. Migration is not something that should be forbidden or whatever. There should not be big walls, dividing the nations, but there should be a control that would somehow, allow you to build your own society, and also at the same time to build a society where the migrants are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't know if Sofia wanted to add something on it.
I'm going to be quick. Sorry. I think we are run out of time, so I'm going to be quick. I like so much like both points of view, and I agree that migration should be with some control, some kind of control, and I also agree that it could be difficult to do it. And I think that we need to, we have 2 points of view that are very, very different, because from the point of view of the migrant, those people are trying to go to some place better, and not just the climate ones, all the migrants, all type of migrants. So, and from the other view, from the EU or the state members, I think that it's also very difficult to control all the migration, and the law, it's not it's not fast, and it's not going as fast as we need to make the regulations that we are needing in those crises. So I think we should focus more on that. Carlos mentioned in the previous question that for example, this idea of text would not be able to do anything because we need to legislate like before all the befores, for saying in that way, before trying to regulate or those aspects.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you. That's one of the things that I learned first at law school. They told us, yeah, first comes the situation and the actions and all of that, and then it comes the law that regulates those acts and actions. So I wanted to thank you three for your interventions and your insights. And now I think it's time for ask our amazing public if any of you have any questions.
Thank you so much for your interventions. First of all, so I wanted to ask you all because about a contradiction that I see with migration management in general. So there's a part of migration which is like high qualified migration. For example, most of Syrians were welcomed in Germany precisely because most of them were highly qualified, and Germany has a shortage of that. That's why Merkel welcomed them with open arms. It was a surprise for many press, for much of the press, not to me. But most of migration is more related to cheap labor. Cheap labor is quite welcome by most of employers in the EU. But at the same time, most employers, and part of that political side that they back, goes against migrants. So there's an intrinsic contradiction there. For example, there's this in El Ejido in Andalusia. It's a village with the most high percentage of migrants, and at the same time, it's where Vox, the party, has the highest amount of percentage of voters. So there's an intrinsic contradiction there. There's also the fact that we still defend an oil-based economy, oil-based cars and oil-based economy, industry in general, but at the same time we know that the climate change has a lot of consequences, and one of them is migration. So we complain about migration, but we want the cheap labor and we want the oil-based industry to keep on. So I see still an intrinsic contradiction there, not only in the right wing, it's all spread across the political spectrum. So I wanted you to comment on this. Thanks.
I like your points. I like to debate with you guys. Let's start with the following. Everybody wants to live better. Yeah, it's normal, you know. I have something, I want to take care of my family, I have studied something or not studied something, but I want to live better. I'm also the son of the migrants, let's call it that way. My grandfather was born in Canada in 1911. And from my mother's side, I have a huge part of the family in Australia that they left Czechoslovakia before the World War II. Even my great father was one of the first Czechoslovak citizens who was granted Australian citizenship in 1934. And they left because they wanted to live better. But they were organized migrants. There was a model in those times, you know, that in the case of Canada, they left before even the World War I. To the boat in Hamburg, you know, from Hamburg, you know, big boat ship to New York, to the Ellis Island, and from Ellis Island and to the mining areas of huge wasting parts of Alberta, Canada, and Calgary. In case of Australia, I think it was a different case because those ancestors, my ancestors, they thought they were going to America, you know, and they landed in Australia. But it also happened in the past. What I wanted to say is a different point, that whatever we do, we will still have somebody looking on our doors, you know, that I want to earn the piece of cake that you have in your country. It's normal for mankind. What is not good in our societies is that the migration itself is being converted into the political topic. I had the honor to take part in, it was in 2022, in Cadiz in the summit called Proceso de Rabat. And that was the best summit on migration I have ever took place in my life, because they were all experts. There were some ministers, but the experts were speaking. It was a completely different point of view that you get on migration. They were not speaking about quotas. They were not speaking about the money paying back, going back home. They were not criticizing Frontex in that time. They were saying about the reality. The cruel at the same time advancing, the cruel reality of Spain is that you have a sea. And sea is most difficult to control. Even if you want to, I mean, it's not that we have a military here, we can tell you, that to watch the sea and to control your borders in the sea is the most difficult. We have 76 kilometers of the external Schengen border with Ukraine that is quite easy to control. 76 kilometers, you know, even there happen things, but it's quite easy. And I see that in this point of view, I mean, all the countries of the EU members and friends and allies should have a little bit of more respect of the countries from the Northern Europe, because you need a technical equipment, you need that, you need boats, you know, whatever. I understand that. But then we come to the political level and the political misuses of migration. And then we start, you know, the crispation that is widely seen. At the very end, the migration will be still needed. Or if you speak about the patronales in Spain or patronales in my country, they always tell you we need a workforce, but we need an educated workforce. I don't know if to pick up the strawberries in Ejido is an educated workforce. I don't know if it's strawberry in Ejido or something else.
In Spain we have an excess of highly qualified people. That's why we export mainly that, and we try to import
I don't say you have an excess of highly qualified people. I mean, you have a lack of chances for highly qualified people. You have a lack of chances for highly qualified people. Never say that you have an excess of highly qualified. You still need them. I mean, that's a potential for the development of your country.
relation to the rest of Europe, like Germany lacks, related to us, Germany lacks because most of the Germans, when they are 18-year-olds, they are told to go to work. So in the that's because of that culture. In the end, they lack people that go to university, and that's one of the reasons why they welcome Syrians, because they are.
No. I'm sorry about that. You know, I'm going to contradict you anyway once. I will give you a good example of my family. We have a dog, a French bulldog. That's not a kind of dog. It's a French bulldog. Yeah. And when we came here, you first look for veterinary services. And you compare it with your country of origin. In the case of Slovakia, we also have experience with Austria, with Czech Republic, something with Hungary, etc. And now you see and you talk with the veterinarios and veterinary docs here in vets in Spain, and you don't see the lack of the highly qualified people. You see real experts. And I'm not speaking about the owner of the pets that are being in your houses and mimados and tutuli puntuli. I'm speaking about the vets that you see, because if you see this background, you see that those vets can be used in the agriculture, and they are extremely well prepared. And when you ask them, because he told, while our Winston is being tweeted, I asked, why didn't you choose the industrial part of veterinary science? No, because I like this one, even if it doesn't bring that much money. That's what they reply. And I said, so you choose your career. Even if it doesn't bring you money? No, because I like it. So Spain is not about a highly qualified personnel. It's also about the quality of life. I mean, in Spain you don't have to earn. Well, you would love to, but you don't have to earn 4,000 euros to live well. Frankly, it is truth. If you leave and you find a good employer somewhere in, I have a case of a Slovak company called Asset. I don't know if you know the name, probably not. But their product, it's called NOD, NOT. It's a very strong antivirus program, one of the 3 worldwide. It's a global company. First, they were based, they are in Silicon Valley, and they have globally based in Bratislava. They have a huge, skyscraper in Singapore, in Buenos Aires, and in Panama. And they are also in Spain. And the owner said, we are not the company that has to
be in Madrid. So they went to Ontinyente. And all the employers with them, they are happy. They earn the same money, you know, everything else is much cheaper, and they're happy. So when you speak about the lack of, not lack, but the excess of the highly educated people, you will still need them, because you don't know where, what kind of region you can have an excellent opportunity. Sometimes I have, when I'm getting bored, you know, in the evenings, I watch the regional TV stations. And I have a very close relation with Galicia, because in the 90s I was on a student exchange in Cambados. Instead of studying Spanish, I was studying Galician in the era of, by the way, of Cita Miñanco. And therefore I like TV Galicia. And it was 2 days ago, while being in Madeira in the evening, you don't have to do. So I switched on TV Galicia, and I saw a couple, you know, youngster, one startup, you know, from Lugo, the guy a vet, and his friend, he's an informatic or whatever, and those guys invented something like a iWatch for cows. I was smiling, looking at my, look at this, you know, the cow with the iWatch, yeah, well, the big one. And it's a quite good idea, you know. Those guys are developing their quality of life somewhere in the rural Galicia. They don't have to live in the city center of Madrid or Barcelona or Malaga or Palma de Mallorca, and they are having a good quality of life. And the same applies to the migrants. You will still have ejidos, because you will still have a consumption market that will ask for cheap potatoes or cheap tomatoes, not only in Spain, but in whole Europe. Therefore, you will need somebody who will pick up them. And it will not be a Spaniard, it will not be a Pole, it will not be a Romanian anymore, it will not be a Bulgarian even more. It will have to be someone coming from the cheaper country who is able to do it. Now, if you find and develop a system that will be attractive for those pickers, or how to call them in English, so they will be well paid, or somehow, you know, let's say morally well paid, but still you will have at the same time a balance, an employer who wants to earn fast money and will not care about money. So we don't have a fast solution for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not an issue. I mean, yeah, I'm just going to make a brief remark, because you were talking about let's say, the contradictions regarding migration, and especially, I'm now going to enter into political scientist vision for a second, but in regards to the contradictions that we see among, especially like right-wing movements, it's mostly because, you know, like right-wing in the end has like two sides, you know, has like two souls. On one side you have like the most liberal-leaning side, and in the other side you have like the national conservative, let's say, wings. So there is always this sort of battle for the soul of the right wing. And that's why if you see that there is some sort of contradiction, it is sensible, because we're talking about two political views that are different per se. So, yeah, that you will see. I mean, right-wing movements defending the idea of, let's say, welcoming migrants. Because precisely that economic factor of development, and then there is like the national conservatives, which will become more, let's say, more sceptic. That's it.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, are there any more questions before giving the floor? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for your discussion. I would like to ask, if I'm not aware of if it's included in the regulation, but if it also, or might also be a problem, the migration within the European Union from southern countries. I can think, for example, Cyprus or Malta, that might face higher problems due to climate change, that these people move towards the northern countries. I don't know if this is included, or if you consider that this could also be a problem. Thank you.
You say it's a problem that people. Are you from Malta?
No, I'm from Spain.
You're from Spain. The people of Malta, from Malta, or Cyprus, or Spain, are going northwards, and if it's a problem, then it should be a problem if the seniors from Northern Europe are moving to Southern Europe. They're happily living in the coast of Spain, or in the Spanish islands, or even in Cyprus, or in the Greek islands. I mean, it's still movement within the European Union, and it doesn't constitute any kind of problem. All the European citizens are equal in their rights. And if a young Spaniard decides to move to Bratislava and work for IBM or whatever, or if a young guy from Cyprus or Cypriot decides to move into Sweden, it's his own decision, and nobody can, forbid him to do that. Because he's trying to find a new friends, or maybe he has a girlfriend from Finland, whatever, and then he finds a good job. Why not? So I don't think it's a problem. If you ask, it can constitute a problem in the future when there will be a real climate change. You mean that, right? So we have to foresee when it will happen. We say that the desertificación de España, ¿no? Que se está convirtiendo el sur de España en un desierto. That's what the people say, no? But still, the desert. When I went to Cadiz or to Malaga, I didn't feel I am in desert. But yes,
yeah. Well, coming from the south of Spain, I mean, I would like to say that regarding the proposal that we discussed, there was no mention. If my memory is correct, of course, there was no mention about let's say, climate migration inside the European Union. Probably because it's really long term. Of course, that Spain will be affected as a southern country, that's for sure. We are already seeing changes. We've seen Dana just like a couple of years ago. So, yeah, of course that we will, there will be a future debate about it. But the proposal discuss about more current, a current issue, which is because climate migration is already a reality. It's happening, and it's not only happening, for instance, with our neighbors, more concretely Africa, but also in South America. It's also happening in South Asia. Yes. So, therefore, what the regulation, let's say, what we're right now tackling is present issues that are not regulated yet. But in terms of future, if this is the tendency, probably yes, very likely. We will have to make new legislation about it.
Thank you. I don't know if I've seen any. I don't know if I have seen any hands over here. I don't know. No? Okay. No. There's liberty over here. So I think that if there aren't any more questions, I think it's time to close the panel. I wanted to thank once more the panelists. I think it has been such a good debate, especially because during these times, people, I know that all of them will have those ideas in their mind, and that will help them to make their own decisions and their own opinions, and that's one of the richness that we will have from here. I also wanted to thank the public for your attention, and I will close the panel now, so thank you.
Nunca.